Hello and welcome to Daily Debrief brought to you by People's Dispatch. I'm Pragya. One of Nigeria's richest men and wealthiest politicians, Bola Tinubu, has won the weekend's presidential election. Opposition parties have questioned how fairly the election was conducted. But in the US, there's opposite news. There's fresh proof that the 2020 presidential election wasn't stolen. Court documents and testimonies reveal that Fox Corporation chief Rupert Murdoch and executives at his Fox network knew this, but they persisted in the lie while covering the election that Donald Trump lost. And reports of 2 cholera deaths amid hundreds of new infections highlight Syria's urgent need for relief. Bola Tinubu, the controversial populist from Nigeria's ruling party, All Progressives Congress, has won the presidential election. The country's independent National Electoral Commission has rejected allegations that opposition parties, who in a replay of 2019 have said the polling process was flawed and tilted against them. APC is Nigeria's ruling party, and Abdul from People's Dispatch joins us with more detail. Abdul, so the two main opposition parties seem to have a lot of issues with how the election was conducted. How is their response different from, what we saw happen after the 2019 election?
Well, it is by and large same. If you see how the reactions are, the only thing is the Labour Party, the left traditionally, which is not usually in the race, was in the race, and it was Peter Obi, their candidate, was the leading candidate throughout the opinion polls and other wherever there was any kind of assessment. He seemed to have the edge over other candidates. But when the results came out, he became third. So apart from the fact that there was a strong left presence, and which was also was being a challenger to the dominant party in Nigeria, rest of the facts, by and large, remain the same. What happened in 2019? The opposition claimed that the ruling party, again the same APC, has basically used its power to basically manipulate the elections, allocate votes. Similar things have happened this time also. Both the left and the opposition party are claiming that the ruling party basically used its control over the power for last almost 8 to 9 years, basically to allocate votes instead of really letting the democratic process smoothly function. So it seems that it falls into the larger, you can say, the tradition of the Nigerian politics, where there have been allegations ever since 1999, when the military rule was over and democratic procedures were established. It seems that the growth of democracy and the values related to democracy, the maturity of the institutions in the country is still not up to the expectations and up to the mark.
Right, Abdul, and we're also seeing that the voter turnout is reducing consistently since 2003 at least. So what does the APC's coming back to power mean in that context, and also in the context of Nigeria's multiple economic problems?
Well, it is very difficult to say. It seems that since this is the continuation of APC's rule, one should assume that this will be the continuation of the kind of economic and other policies followed by the previous administration, because the ruling party remains the same, and the election of the new president does not basically create any new change in the overall political orientation of the ruling classes and the ruling ideology in Nigeria. As it is well reported, the Nigerian economy, which was once the largest economy on the continent, given the fact that this is the largest country on the continent, is faltering despite the fact that the oil prices have been booming in last few months at least, and other oil-based economies in the Gulf and in other parts of the world have seen a tremendous change, positive change when it comes to generation of revenue and so and so forth. But Nigeria has not been able to do the same, despite the fact that this is one of the largest producer of oil in the world and one of the largest exporters as well.
Right.
Apart from that, the larger communal divide of the country, the emergence of, the presence of the extremist groups in different parts of the country remains to be a challenge to the peace and stability in the country. And APC previous rule has failed completely, though there were some improvements in some parts. But overall, there was not much progress made when it comes to the marginalization of the extremist groups in the society. I think since it will be by and large a continuation of the previous regime, it's difficult to see any improvement on that front also. If there is some change, that will of course be a welcome thing to see. But as of now, given the fact that as I said before, the ruling party, the ruling dispensation by and large remains the same, there is hardly any positive expectation.
Right, Abdul, and thanks a lot for that update. I could have, but I didn't. Those are the words of Fox Corporation Chairman Rupert Murdoch. He's referring to how he could have stopped the Fox network guests from spreading the lie that the 2020 US election was stolen from Republicans and former US President Donald Trump. This was revealed in court documents related to Fox Corp and Fox Network. Dominion Voting Systems is suing both of them for spreading the stolen election story. Media billionaire Murdoch apparently thought some commentators endorsed the stolen election idea, but he has testified that he and his executives knew Joe Biden won that election fairly. Anish from People's Dispatch has been following the story. Let's go over to him. Anish, good to have you back on the show. So, Anish, Rupert Murdoch, never free from controversy, but this time it seems really big. It seems that he has, walked into a sort of situation which he can't walk out of very easily. He knew what was going on and decided not to do anything about it.
Yeah, so it is a very complicated situation, and won't be the first time that Murdoch is in that situation, is in a situation or something similar to it, obviously. But obviously, the revelations that were made in the unsealed documents were quite stark. Most of which most of us probably had a good deal of idea about. It's just got confirmed in many ways. During the whole stolen election narrative that Trump and his supporters were pushing at the time of the elections, and also right after the elections when the votes were being sanctioned by the Congress and the whole Capitol Hill incident happened. It's just throughout that entire period, and even after that, even in the recent midterm elections, that we saw this narrative being being brought up by Trump and his supporters multiple times, and Fox News in many ways and the Murdoch media in general were part of that entire propaganda apparatus at the time. So this admission that obviously Murdoch and also people in Fox News knew very well that that the conspiracy theory that they were trying to push was not true, was completely full of falsities, but they still went ahead with it, is something that is far more concerning. And even more concerning is the reason why they did that. Obviously, the reason why they did that is they did not want to lose their audience to the more far-right alternative media websites that were popping up at the time, were gaining a lot of traction, and they just did not want to lose that audience because they understood who their audience were, and the average Trump voter would obviously give up mainstream media source, even if it's Fox News, if they could get their biases being vindicated by something straight out of YouTube. So definitely this was an attempt and shows the significant influence that the far right has, whether or not Fox Stream was part of it, the influence that far right has to bring a monopoly to its lines shows something far more serious happening in the United States.
Right, Anish, and yet this trial hasn't yet begun, right? It's going to be decided by the court sometime after April, whether Murdoch was involved and to what extent, and so on. So, what is the right-wing media up to now? How are they tackling this sort of very obvious expose of the fact that their own channel has said that, well, everything we said wasn't true. Not everything we said was true, at least.
It's kind of complicated because the manner in which the American right currently operates is that it kind of dismisses everything that is mainstream, and which includes Fox News and Murdoch, because they consider them to be too moderate for their taste. The far right obviously has grown significantly, at least by in terms of volume, the volume of content that it produces, the presence that they have on online and offline spaces, and even on news in general, you see them being quite ever present. So their influence is quite strong. So they really do not have to, like, even if tomorrow Fox News starts being more ethical in their in their media coverage of current politics, it's still they still can prop up their own propaganda machinery, and that was something that we saw during the Capitol Hill riots, when it wasn't Fox News per se that was at the heart of calling for action, so-called action on the Congress, but it was your more alternative media spaces that were pushing for it. You had these conspiracy theories being spread across social media, and so all of these factors is much, the network is far bigger than what the mainstream would give it credit for. The manner in which they are entrenched in the American right-wing ecosystem is much bigger than what Fox News could, at least the influence that it has is much bigger than what Fox News could have. What it cares about right now, obviously, and has always only cared about is the audience that it gets, the revenue that it can make out of that audience, obviously. But on the more grassroots level, you have a more independent organization of right-wing media being ever present, who can function pretty much on their own. So it is far more disconcerting to think that they had this sort of influence to actually bring we have to remember that Fox News, not just Fox News, News Corp in general, and Fox Corp controls some of the biggest monopolies in the world, in at least the Anglo-Saxon world. The Wall Street Journal is one of the biggest and the most widely read, newspapers in North America, not just the United States. The Murdoch media has pretty much a big, massive share of viewership in Australia and also Canada and even the United States. And it is one of those bigger monopolies. And so if something, such a huge, massive media conglomerate can be, made to pay heed to the kind of popularity that these smaller, very disparate media groups can have, and the kind of traction that they can gain, it surely says a lot about the current political ecosystem that the United States is having right now than just the Murdoch media and their influence on the larger American politics. So that is where attention needs to be spent, and concern needs to be shown a lot more at this point.
Right, Anish, a much bigger problem, and thanks a lot for joining us. There were many warnings that Syria's already weak health infrastructure would suffer from the blow delivered by the recent earthquake. Some of those fears seem to be coming true. At least 568 cholera infections have been detected in the earthquake-hit country. 2 have died of the infection, according to the Syria Civil Defense, which released this data over Twitter recently. Anna from People's Health Movement joins us with an update. Anna, thank you for joining us. Anna, we've spoken about cholera and the Syrian earthquake before. What is the latest update?
Well, since we last spoke, the numbers have remained high, as we mentioned. In the three areas most affected by the earthquake in northwest Syria, we know that around 400,000 people have been affected directly, with 3 million people all over the country being affected in some way. When it comes to health facilities, 55 health facilities have been damaged. It's either partially damaged or completely destroyed in the earthquake. And of course, as you mentioned, this happened amid an ongoing cholera outbreak, which was happening in Syria and which started in September 2022. Then the health authorities reported that the outbreak was linked to people consuming contaminated water from the river, but also because they used the same water to irrigate the crops and then consumed contaminated food.
Okay.
So the outbreak was already cause for concern before the earthquake, but since February 6th, different sources have reported an uptake in the number of reported cases, and also, unfortunately, in the number of deaths. So in the last couple of days, 2 additional deaths have been reported from cholera in northwest Syria. What I need to say here, though, is that getting accurate data for this region is still very, it's very daunting. It's been daunting before, it's even more daunting now. This is because the health needs in the region are extremely high at the moment, of course. There are different kinds of needs going on all over the place. And then if we look at the health system in northwest Syria in particular, it's been weakened before from years of conflict, of underfunding, and so on. So it's very difficult to get up-to-date and adequate data from the region continuously. And then a final point, perhaps, is that, since the earthquake hit, we know that there has been an international appeal to raise funds and to actually get them to both Turkey and Syria and to help the response to the earthquakes there. But some of the latest information from the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, we know that the donations which would be used to respond to the needs in water, sanitation, and hygiene are still very far from what is needed. So the latest UN data was that there's approximately $40 million which still need to be raised in order to meet the actual needs that we know are there on the ground. And again, those might be even worse because we know that the situation wasn't great to begin with.
Right, Anna. Excuse me. Right, Anna. So the thing is that now you're dealing with the earthquake plus the cholera outbreak, and this outbreak isn't limited to Syria. It's actually a wider problem. Can you tell us about that?
Of course, if we look at the West Asia and North Africa region alone, we know that there have been outbreaks in Lebanon just last year. So this is from October 2022. We have heard from health experts after the earthquake in Turkey, warning that there might be a cholera outbreak there if the response doesn't pick up soon. So it's crucial to actually get all the resources and all the help that we can as soon as possible to the ground. And then if we look more widely, if we look at the world in general, the situation is extremely worrying, and the WHO has just a couple of days ago warned about the ongoing crisis in cholera outbreaks that the world is facing. At the moment, 22 countries in the world are facing an outbreak of cholera. These include Syria, but they also include Haiti. They also include Mozambique, which was also devastated by a cyclone just recently. So we are seeing the cholera adding to the ongoing issues that are happening in different countries.
And that's
That's combined with the
low vaccine availability as well.
Definitely. So, it's also something that we have talked about here before. Last year, it was the first time that the WHO recommended the use of 1 dose of cholera vaccine instead of 2, because they're worried about the vaccine stocks. And even more recently, so just a couple of days ago, the WHO, for the first time in history, has appealed to donors to fund a cholera response fund, because they are worried that the situation that began in 2022 will continue throughout the year, and that we actually don't have the resources needed to address this. And this is devastating, because cholera is an extremely preventable disease. It's essentially something that we can address by making sure that people live in dignity. So that's one of the worst things to see here, that so many people are actually forced to live in conditions where they have no access to safe water or to safe food.
Right, Anna, and thanks a lot for joining us. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you for watching Daily Debrief. Do come back to us tomorrow. You can visit our website for more People's Dispatch stories and watch our regular updates on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
For more videos on people's struggles, please subscribe to our YouTube channel.